Hello and welcome to the Becoming You podcast. My name is Lisa Hardy and I am so glad you're here today. Now, before we dive into this conversation, I just wanted to acknowledge you for pressing play, for showing up, and for listening to this episode while you're probably doing 100 other things, whether you're folding laundry or driving or just making dinner or even just stirring up a nice cup of coffee or tea. I want you to know that this space is for you exactly as you are. And I've been thinking about this episode for a few weeks now that we're coming into the new year, 2026. I can't believe it. And it feels like just the right time for the topic of this episode, especially as I said, we're going to the new year and we often get that little nudge that tells us that something needs to change, something needs to shift. Not necessarily in sort of a dramatic way, not bigger, not better, but just maybe something that's a little bit more supportive. Because if you're anything like the women I support, the women in my community or the ones that I coach, you've probably tried to change your life before. You've set goals, you've made plans, you've promised yourself that this time would be different. And maybe it was for a while. Schedules changed, energy dipped, emotions got heavier, and slowly, sometimes even without noticing, you drifted back to where you started. And instead of curiosity, what often shows up is frustration, self-doubt, the familiar thought of, why can't I just stick to things? So today, I want to talk about habits, but not in sort of a way that you're usually talked about. And more importantly, I want to introduce something that I believe is far more supportive, far more realistic, and far more sustainable for real life, especially for moms. And that is rituals. And there is a distinct difference between habits and rituals. And we're going to talk about it. Now, this idea isn't something that I came up in isolation. It's deeply influenced by thought leadership in the coaching and behavioral space change, particularly the work of Michael Bungay Stanier, the author of The Coaching Habit. I admire his work deeply, and if you haven't read The Coaching Habit, I highly recommend. But his work really shapes so many modern coaching conversations and behavior changes because he understands something really important. Humans don't change through pressure, they change through design. He talks about habits as behaviors that we try to automate. Things that, we make so routine that they take less effort. And rituals, on the other hand, are behaviors that we intentionally choose. We attach meaning to them and we return to them because they support us. And that distinction also matters because habits are about efficiency and rituals are often rooted in presence. A habit asks, did I do this or not? Where a ritual asks, did this support me today? And when you start to notice that difference, you often feel it in your body almost immediately. Most habit conversations are rooted in discipline. Do it every day, stick to it, be consistent no matter what. And while none of that is inherently bad, it often ignores the reality of many women's life, especially mom. Our days are unpredictable. Our energy fluctuates. Our emotional load is at an all-time high, usually every single day. And rigid habits don't account for that. Rituals do. Rituals bend when life bends. Habits tend to break. And when habits break, most women don't restart. We give up. Okay, I am guilty of that. Not because we don't care, not because we quietly decide that they're the problem, because it's easier just to let them go than to restart. Rituals don't really create that dynamic. Rituals are relational. They're often rooted in a relationship with ourselves. And that's why I love them so much. And I want to pause here because I think this is where a lot of us have been misled. We've been taught that if something doesn't stick, it's because we're inconsistent, we're unmotivated, we're lacking discipline. But more often than not, it's because the behavior that we're trying to force doesn't actually align with who we are or the season that we're in. Let me give you a real life example from my own life because it perfectly illustrates what I mean. And that is skincare. And I know skincare is such a trivial thing, but just hear me out, okay? For a long time, I tried to do a skincare routine, and this is going back several years. And honestly, when I first started doing a skincare routine, I absolutely hated it. I hated it. I did it because social media told me I should. And it sounds trivial, but you can probably relate to this. We see something on social media and we're saying, oh, I should be doing that, right? Somewhere along the way, I have absorbed this message that if I didn't start taking care of my skin in a very specific way, that I was somehow failing. I was going to quote unquote age wrong, or that I was not doing enough to preserve myself. And every time that I tried to stick to it, it honestly felt so yucky. And that's the only word I have for it, right? It felt forced. It felt rooted in this fear that I was aging if I didn't do my skincare. And it really felt like the pressure was disguised as self-care. So of course I didn't stick to it, not because I was lazy, not because I didn't care, but because the meaning behind it didn't align with me. And here's the thing, I'm actually okay with aging. I'm not trying to stop time. I'm not trying to chase youth. That motivation sort of never resonated with me. And that's why that habit never stood a chance. But something shifted. At some point, skincare stopped being about, I should do this to stay young, and became about something completely different. And now it is a nightly ritual that I absolutely adore. I love it. It's now one of my favorite parts of the day, not because it's preventing aging in any way, but because of how it just makes me feel. It's tied to my mental well-being, my physical well-being, and it's tied to my nervous system because when I put on that eye mask, something I do almost every night, when I massage my face, when I take that 20 to 30 minutes at night just for myself, the message underneath it is no longer fear. The message is, I deserve to be taken care of. I am important enough to slow down, or I'm allowed to enjoy caring for myself. And yes, there are physical benefits. My skin is clearer. It's absolutely softer. And I am probably aging a little bit more gracefully than I would otherwise. I am going to say it. But that's not the reason why I do it, right? Those are just the side effects. The real benefit is that it creates a moment where my body can exhale, where my nervous system can regulate, where I don't have to think about my to-do list or what's coming next or this and that. And, my head's not spinning during that time. It's truly a moment for me to relax and care for myself. It's where I'm not needed by anyone else, where I'm not producing or performing or trying to fix everything. It's just caring for myself. It's the same action I was doing when I was trying to create this habit initially, but now it has a completely different meaning. When skincare was a habit rooted in pressure, I resisted it. When it became a ritual rooted in self-worth and my own well-being, it stuck effortlessly. And I won't ever give it up. And this is exactly what I mean when I say rituals change things in ways that habits alone can't. Because rituals aren't necessarily about what we're doing. They're about why you're doing it and how it makes you feel while doing it. I also want to pause here and say something really important because I don't want this to be a conversation about habits are bad and rituals are good. That's not what this is. Habits are not bad. Every single person has habits, good habits, bad habits, and that's okay. In fact, habits can be incredibly supportive. Our habit of making our coffee or tea in the morning, brushing our teeth, putting on deodorant, that kind of stuff. Those are habits that are incredibly supportive in our life. Is inevitable though, is that no matter what you're trying to change, there can be some resistance, and there likely is going to be some resistance. So whether you're trying to introduce a new habit or a ritual for yourself, anytime that you introduce something new, even when it's good, there's always going to be some level of pushback. And that's not a flaw. That's not self-sabotage. That's just how change works. And this is another place where I really appreciate the work of Michael Bungay Stanier, is that he talks about the idea when we're trying to create change that the goal isn't to eliminate resistance. It's actually to design around it, because resistance will show up whether it's a habit or ritual. You might feel it as procrastination, as forgetting, as I'll start tomorrow, as doing it for a few days and then slipping. That doesn't mean it's not working. It means that you're human, Let's start there. One of the most simplest and most effective ways to work with resistance instead of fighting it is to start somewhere easy. Not impressive, not perfect, but easy. Something small. And that's why something like skincare is such a great example. It's accessible, it's tangible, it doesn't require this huge mental leap. You're not overhauling your life, you're starting with a simple moment. And I know that we've had these conversations inside my Joyful Mom Collective, which I'll talk about in a second, where we talk about how we're just so tired to even do our skincare routine. And that's where really working on building a ritual around that is really going to help you, because you're changing the meaning and you're not just brushing it off. Another principle he talks about is to start small. And I know that sounds obvious, but most of us don't actually do it. We aim for the ideal version right away, the full routine, the perfect streak, the all or nothing version is what we strive for. And that's often what we go for right away. Small is powerful because small is repeatable. So if all you can do, and I'm going back to that skincare routine, is if all you can do is spend a few minutes putting on some moisturizer, perfect. That is great. Get into the habit, get into that ritual of doing it every night, noticing how it makes you feel, and then slowly start adding and adding until it becomes the full routine that you're looking for. Small steps. A small ritual done imperfectly will always be a perfect plan that doesn't happen. Okay, I'm going to say that one more time so you can really listen. I think this is such a powerful thing. A small ritual done imperfectly will always beat a perfect plan that doesn't happen. The perfect plan doesn't exist. It usually takes small steps to get there. And the third piece, and I think this is especially important for moms, is not to do it alone. Change sticks better when it's supported, when someone else knows what we're working on, when there's accountability, encouragement, or simply a shared language around what we're trying to create. That might look like you check in with the friends. It might look like a shared commitment. Or it might look like being a part of a community where these conversations are normal. And that's actually one of the reasons why I created my collective. Not as a place to do more, but as a place to return, to normalize slipping, to normalize trying again, to remind each other that progress doesn't have to be linear in order to be meaningful. Don't give up. Not because it didn't work the first time, not because you forgot, not because you fell out of rhythm. Habits and rituals will slip. Life will interrupt them, and that doesn't mean they're broken. What matters isn't whether you stayed consistent. It's whether you're willing to come back without turning it into a story about failure. Because the real shift happens when I fell off becomes I'm returning. That's where change actually sticks. If you're listening to this thinking, this sounds good, but how do I actually start? This is where I want to slow down one last time. Rituals don't need to be big. In fact, the smaller that they are, the more likely you're going to stick with them. A ritual might look like one intentional breath in the morning before looking at your phone. It might be asking yourself one grounded question each morning. It might be drinking your coffee without multitasking. It might be a weekly meditation to pause instead of just trying to push through. Before we wrap up, I want to leave you with this. You are not behind. You are not failing. And you don't need a full life overhaul. You need habits and rituals that meet you where you are, not where you think you should be. If this episode resonated with you, I'd love for you to share it with someone who might need it too. That's how these conversations reach women who are quietly carrying a lot. And make sure you're following the podcast so you don't miss what's coming next. We're going to keep building on this foundation in ways that feel practical, grounded, and real. And if you are craving a space where these conversations continue, where we talk about self-trust and boundaries and habits and building a life that actually supports you, I do have a free community where you can go deeper into this work. There's no pressure, just support, and you're always welcome. I'll link it in the show notes in case you're interested. So thank you for being here. Thank you for listening. And thank you for being willing to approach life with curiosity instead of judgment. And remember that you are worth showing up for. Always. We'll see you next week on the Becoming You podcast.